This is a prime example of, why these meetings are good to get together and hammer out unfinished business. And so can we get this on one of our meetings for May?
Yes, we can. And it may or may not need to come back to the board. The agreement is between the two buyers.
Okay, thanks again. Is there any other banners or any public comment on this side?
I'd like to ask Mr. Chairman is that it is between the districts, but it would be nice if the board could have a report as to what those districts have done. So it doesn't have to come back maybe for board action, but it would be great to have a report to the board so the board knows that action took place. Because it obviously the issue brought forth by the MoDOT reps is really timely. I think we need to follow through and make sure that action gets taken there.
We would also like to have a report or just information similar so we can do a report to our people in the community so we know what's going on in regards to it, because it is important. This is something that's been around for a while, and it does keep falling through the cracks for some reason. And actually, they save lives, so that's the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this before we move on? Okay. Okay, let's move up to the jail operation issues from Sierra County. Paul Rowan is going to...
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Jeff Bosworth, who's here. He's our probation program manager. He's coming up, Jeff, and you can give him a little rundown on our 109. I mean, we just will lump them all together if you don't mind, because we did an in-depth study with the two ADs and we're finally starting to figure out how to utilize some of that funding in the current financial year.
It's kind of hard to explain to understand what we're doing with realignment until you understand why realignment came about.
I'm sorry, could you just say your name again?
Sure. My name's Jeff Bosworth. I'm the Chief Probation Officer in Sierra County.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody's heard of the 3-judge panel that says we're going to take everybody from prison and dump them on the counties. There's actually a lot more than that, and for the small counties, at least mine, that part of it hasn't had that big of an impact. But what it is that there are some bad people who do bad things and they need to be in prison. There are other people who are basically good folks who make mistakes and you need to deal with them a different way. Putting them in jail is not always effective, it's expensive, and it doesn't work very well. An analogy I like to use is ask yourself how many people speed when they drive. Almost all of us. Now, how many of you speed when there's a highway patrolman in your rear view? Nobody. So the only time fear of punishment keeps you from doing something is when you think you're not going to get caught. So the people we work with don't think they're going to get caught, so the fear of punishment doesn't work. So what we're trying to do with our realignment is to come up with some programs that we can with our small county to help. One of the things we're setting up a portion of our office where probationers can come in and work on their high school diplomas and such. I've done studies before, more than half of our probationers don't even have a high school diploma. We're going to allow them to work on resumes and job applications using the probation department computer and other programs like that. We've developed an electronic monitoring program, which so far has been well over the last couple of years. It was kind of a fight to get that in place. We can have somebody on electronic monitoring for 2 weeks for the cost of 1 day in jail. It's a good program for someone so you can get some accountability where they don't lose their job and their phone. Those are the things we're doing with realignment. As part of that, we've commissioned a study to see if it's economically feasible to keep our jail in place. It's pretty expensive. It costs us, I think, like $1,000 a day, whether or not we have anybody in there. Sometimes we don't, because we're small. That's eventually going to be a board decision. We hired a firm out of Sacramento to do the study. I still haven't seen the results yet. We've been promising it every month,
On the agenda for Tuesday.
for about 4 months. Well, I still haven't seen it. So I'd be surprised if it's done. I didn't put this item on the agenda, so I don't know what more people are asking for, but I'll be happy to answer any questions on what I can. We also have the other chiefs of the other counties here. We have Elias Fernandez from Lassen County, Modoc County, Jennifer from Lassen, and Dan Prince-Becker from Plymouth. Any one of the four of us would be happy to answer whatever you'd like to know about realignment of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think it was just an informational thing, is how to go, because we did a really in-depth study to try to figure out how to utilize this money in a legal fashion, because we were getting some real pushback on what we could use it for, and that's why we took this route.
Okay, thank you. Is there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
I'd like to comment for Plymouth. I can speak loud. I work a lot on the criminal justice issues with all our partners, the DA, sheriff. And in Plymouth County, we've taken that money, we've opened a day reporting center. We have alternative sentencing, which is fabulous. If you ever look into that, you should call Stephanie Tanaka in Plymouth County. But alternative sentencing allows them to get into the community. You know, once they come back from the prison, they meet with Stephanie or her staff. If they need alcohol and drug services, mental health, you know, relay them to allied workforce, jobs. So they get a whole package of what they need to do. They can even, you know, go to the college. Well, we have college. But anyway, I would talk with Stephanie, because we're really making good efforts in Plymouth County.
The things I discussed are actually the Sheriff County's version of the Day Reporting Center. I've been to several as we come up with our program, looking at them to see what they have to offer. We're doing this. I didn't use the phrase Day Reporting Center, but when I talked about providing a place for them to work on their education or job searches, or there's some treatment programs we're starting up, but in addition to using the county resources, we're going to revamp the credibility
We've
of our
been creative
community
with the
services.
AB 109 monies. You know, we hired more deputies, we hired used it for probation. We're pretty creative. We funded our literacy program to work with that population. So, yeah, you can use that money.
We did the same thing. The deputy probation officer we hired with realignment money started last Friday. We've offered the jail to pay for a couple of correctional officers and some other things, but they're kind of waiting on a decision whether to keep it open or not. We've got one plan to go forward if it stays open, and if they decide to do something else, then our CCP will be together and come up with plan B.
So are you working with Sheriff Hagwood in Plymouth to maybe use our jail?
We use Nevada County when we can. I think the person who's doing the study, it's Criminal Justice Research Foundation out of Sacramento. He's supposedly contacting others. I believe he was supposed to contact them. Whether he did or not, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
So I'm not overly involved in the jail aspect of it. In fact, the SB 678 part of realignment, that came about specifically because when these three judges said clean out the prisons, so you know what, probation, you have a higher success rate than parole does. So we're going to give probation money to not send quite so many people to prison and keep them out of jails and work. So that's what the 678 part of realignment is actually keeping fewer people in jail.
So one thing we're finding is in our jail that people are not going to state prison, they're getting 9 years in the county jail. And that's going to fill up pretty soon.
The chief probation officers of California are kind of working on that. The worst I've ever heard is there was a case out of Riverside that after his trial had a potential of 99 years in the county jail, which they knocked down to about 9. But I think they weren't expecting that when they were looking at it this way, so there is some legislation in the works to give us kind of a cap.
Yeah, our county, yeah, we're pushing hard to try to get a new jail. We're not set up for prison, we have to segregate, you know, the child molesters and all that. And we don't have a big jail, so it's not, they didn't think of all the implications.
Right, and every county is different. Sierra County is so small, the impact hasn't been that big. What it has been is we've been able to provide treatment sources for people who in the past have gone to prison. And we've got a couple right now we're doing, you know, they went to prison 5 years ago. We put them in some rehab and paid for it with realignment dollars, and they haven't reoffended, they haven't tested positive. They're working, they're doing exceptionally well. So with our small numbers, we are having some good luck with keeping people out of prison.
That's good.
And I'm sure the other three chiefs have similar stories. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Paul, did you have a third item you wanted to? Is there another?
No, those were the three things.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Modoc County item, the Southern Cascades Community Service District.
This is Supervisor Jerry Burns' area, and she will handle that conversation in regards to this district.
Thank you, Jen. So this district also overlaps Modoc and Lassen County, and when the agenda was being put together, we had an issue that I thought would be good to bring before us, but I think the issue's been solved. The election will be on the June ballot, and if it passes, then both Lassen and Boyd will be appointing the original 3 people in the district. Modoc will be appointing 2 in the district, I believe. But the issue, the reason I put this on the list has been solved, so thank you.
Okay, it's also been requested from Modoc County that we bring up another topic of discussion, which would be a quarterly meeting between the board chairmen. And I think it's a good idea. I'd like to pass the microphone down for you, have an opportunity for you to talk about it a little bit.
This is something I've come up with, and I think is would be beneficial for all the counties here to at least we have the chairs meet quarterly to do exactly what we're doing here today. Talk about issues that are bordering our counties, talk about issues that are affecting our counties, because everything that affects Lassen County, Plymouth County, Sierra County also affects Modoc County. The water, forestry, animals that we got out there, the wolf, the coyotes, everything that we're dealing with is affecting us. And what we're doing, and what I see happening here, is that each county is writing their own letter in support of or opposing all these events, all these things that are taking place in our counties in Northern California. And having said that, that one letter gets lost on a desk someplace in Sacramento, Washington, D.C., or wherever else it goes. So my thought is to bring the counties together as a group, and when we find something that we want to oppose, we oppose it together. If we find something we want to support, we support it together. Because a group of 5 and 5 counties brings more voters to the table to allow these people to think that maybe they should listen to some of our complaints up here and some of the things that we have going on in our counties. the voting population in Modoc County is nothing to worry about in the big picture, the big scheme of things. But the voting picture in Shasta County, Siskiyou County, Lassen County, Plumas County, Sierra County, Tehama County, Delaware County, Trinity County, that's something to worry about. Because now they have to pay attention to what we're saying. We've missed out on representation in the last years, and it's time for us to get together as a group of counties and focus on our issues up here and let people in Los Angeles know and San Francisco know that our lifestyle is different than their lifestyle down there. So what I'm asking is that we get together somewhere or another and get more counties involved and come to the table and talk about our issues and how we're going to support these issues or not support them. Even if we don't come to the table, at least with the chair of the board, bring the issues to their board members so we can vote on it and get a group together to make bring our voice to Sacramento and our voice also to Washington, D.C. That's my thought. Anyone else have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do, real quick. Sounds like to me a four-man's structure is state of Jefferson.
Well, I know that Plumas County would absolutely support that. The value of being able to sit down at the table and just solve the issue on special districts can't be overstated.
Yeah, we all need to continue to reinvent the wheel. I mean, we're all working on separate issues at the same time.
So I guess in saying that, I just volunteered myself to help coordinate. As if I don't have a whole lot to do. I will try to coordinate it the best I can, and we'll try to set a meeting in the future. And I will also talk to a couple of members of Siskiyou County and Dane County.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great suggestion, Jim, and I think it's important though that we keep the uniqueness of our four counties, primarily on the east side of the mountains as it relates to California, even though Plumas and Sierra do have west side as well. And I think with RCRC and with CSAC, we already have a larger structure for weighing in on the bigger issues. And a lot of times the issues that we have on this side of the mountain, just seem to be out of step with the rest of it. So occasionally bringing in Siskiyou, Shasta, some of those to help weigh in on obviously an issue of impact to them is important. But I would hope that the focus would be of the four county chairs kind of coordinating maybe the four counties' response. And you're right. A letter from Lassen, a letter from Sierra may sit there amongst a whole bunch of them, but I think a letter from our sub-regional group of the four counties should have a lot more weight, I think, in terms of input to the agencies, the regulatory agencies, as well as to our legislative reps. And so I think it's a good suggestion, a good way to step forward. But let's not underestimate the value of the RCRC group and CSAC and those that are already in place. Years ago, we used to have the Northern California Supervisors Association, which was a kind of a body that existed under CSAC that was pretty much 9 or 10 million, kind of very similar to the NORTEC region setup. And it functioned until it kind of petered out, mainly because RCRC took up on a much larger scale and did that representation of the rural counties from the north. But our focus, I think, is the four counties, and that's the value of the quad meeting or tri meeting that we have these occasions, is the ability to collaborate and work together.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, and I look forward to working with you and setting up the first one. Yeah, so very good. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Maybe we could talk during the lunch break and bring up the item again after lunch. The Trudell presentation will be after our break, so I think what we should do is move on to probation department and take up the juvenile hall item.
Good morning, Chairman of the Board, members of the Board, Jen Branning, Acting Chief Probation Officer. Over the years, we've seen a decline in some of the average daily populations within our juvenile hall. And I think that that's across the board in most of the other counties. And I'm sure that some of the other chiefs would agree too, is that, you know, with the juvenile realignment, it's worked so well that we don't have very many kids in juvenile halls anymore. When the juvenile hall for Lassen County was expanded back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they had, in their original grant for the Voiders funds that they used to get that expansion and completed, some of the projections that they used were that in the year 2000, our lowest population would be 33, and in 2010, our lowest populations would be 38. And I'm sure, as some of you may be aware, our populations sometimes, you know, go down to anywhere between 8 and 15 on any given day. So that's quite a bit less than what was projected. So what we've been working on for Lassen County is looking at all of the participation from the other counties as well. The projections for the Plumas and Modoc counties were going to be for, you know, 1 and 2 youth, typically for that population for the month. So what we've seen is that's kind of holding true, but sometimes, as you know, our population does, it fluctuates greatly on a daily basis. So we find that sometimes we have a lot of participation and a lot of youth from Modoc and Plumas County, to where there's some months that we don't. So I wanted to start out by giving you some of those population averages that were provided in that grant in 1998 for the funding. And that's what the first, there's the County of Lassen Regional Juvenile Detention Facility Needs Assessment, and that goes through some of the projections. There's also the executive summary that has the number of pre-adjudicated 707 offenders. That number is definitely lower as well. So we also have the executive summary that kind of showed what some of the needs were at that time in the late 90s, early 2000s, to where we were going to have more and more juveniles. Now we're faced with less and less, so we're trying to figure out exactly what we can do to expand that and to, you know, make sure that we have participation from all of the other counties. Does anybody have any questions?
I think you just carry on, and then I'm sure there'll be questions, but is that all you had, or do you have more?
No, I just wanted to see if there was questions so far. Some of the things that we're currently working on in order to reduce the cost to the net county general fund is we were able to renegotiate our group home lease because there's the older portion of our juvenile hall that is leased by environmental alternatives, and we have the Delphi group home, and we were able to renegotiate that so that we could get that more in line with some of today's costs and everything. So we were able to have a $2,500 a month lease with 25% of the utilities. We are also looking into utilizing the school nutrition program for the state of California so that we can get reimbursed for some of the meals that we receive for the juveniles at the juvenile hall. We are also looking at some of our long-term opportunities for funding, which is looking at a regional treatment facility, and we're also trying to look at some of the camp funding to see what's going to be the best direction for Lassen County to take in looking at bringing more kids back from placement so that we don't have to spend a lot of our dollars placing kids outside of Lassen County, outside of Plumas County, and outside of Modoc County. We would be able to have somewhere close by that's regional so that we would be able to see, you know, hey, we've got our kids here, we can create that continuum of care, we can provide for their needs within their counties and locally so that we don't have to send them out. We're also looking at doing a time study for our fines and fees. I know that typically our fines and fees, we don't charge a lot of those. So with the juvenile hall, we charge the parents $15 a day for their juveniles being in juvenile hall, but we also have a waiver system that will waive that down to zero if they meet the income qualifications, which most people do. So what we're looking at is trying to find something that's a little more sliding scale fee and trying to figure out exactly what some of those hard costs are and how we can work that out into having the juveniles and their parents pay for those as well. We've also looked at if we are not able to continually secure a lease from our juvenile group home with Adelphi and environmental alternative, we would be able to combine our juvenile probation department with the juvenile hall to create a more effective workflow.
So evidently there's less bookings, correct?
Yes.
So I noticed the staff, there's 4 vacancies. Has the staff been laid off some more people, or you're not filling vacancies, or what?
We haven't laid anybody off yet. We've had a couple of, we have seen some turnover lately. Part of that is due in part to the instability of the funding for juvenile hall, and everybody kind of gets a little bit worried as to whether or not they're going to have a dog. We do make sure that our staffing patterns meet the Title 15 and Title 24 regulations as well.
So there's a, well, I know there's a mandate for how much staff should be there.
Yes.
Are there any other questions at this time? I have some questions, but I'll hang on to it. Or do you have?
I'm done.
Maybe before we begin, I think Richard suggested maybe he could give a brief history of the hall and how we find ourselves here today with, it's a big problem for our county, for our budget. Even once you take in the revenue we get from the other counties that participate, and as well as you minus out the grant funding we get for having the hall, still in excess of $1 million we have to budget for out of our general fund. So it's a problem that we need to find a solution for. So anyhow, I think it would be good to take up your suggestion and get a little bit of a story.
Thank you. The recent history of the juvenile hall in Classic County begins somewhere in the late 90s. And like a lot of your counties and across the state, counties were having a very difficult time finding beds to place their juveniles in. And in classic California fashion, the legislature threw a bunch of money at that problem and offered grants to counties throughout the state who would build halls, and particularly regional juvenile halls. Lassen County took advantage of that grant process, and based on a lot of your county's support and request for needed beds as well, and built or applied for the funds. At that time, the projections that were compiled for Lassen County and all of your counties as well indicated an increasing need for beds, and our consultant's analysis at the time indicated that, for example, in 2010, Lassen County would require an average of 45 beds between all three units, Sierra and Lassen, total, or an average estimate of 50 beds. During that same time, a lot of other counties took advantage of that grant opportunity and built halls as well. And so we have kind of a situation where statewide there's an overcapacity